So it's my privilege to introduce Jessie. I just made eye contact with, oh, there she is. And then I lost her. All right, Jessie Golem is an entrepreneur. She's a professional writer, speaker, photographer, pianist, and activist. Jessie has years of experience working in the not-for-profit world, both in frontline and operations. In 2018, Jessie, you used your skills, your photography skills, to produce a portrait series called Humans of Basic Income. And this series amplifies the stories of many recipients of Ontario's prematurely canceled basic income pilot project. And you'll see some of these beautiful photos around the front of the room. We'll get a little bit more of a taste of this photo series in the documentary. And I encourage you, please visit Jessie's website. Your portraits are stunning, they're frank, and they're a really good reminder of why advocating for big is such an incredible job that we're all working on together. You literally put faces to the cause. So we're thrilled to have you today. Thanks for flying in. And come on up, introduce the documentary, and thanks for agreeing to facilitate a Q&A as well.
Well, thank you so much for that warm introduction, and just thank you for having me here today. To all the organizers, Mandy, everybody, thank you so much. It's been a very inspiring day, very educational, very informative. I've learned so much, and I'm going to be digesting all of this info for days to come, and I'm just so happy about that. My story is that I was on the basic income pilot that was prematurely canceled in Ontario, and you'll see, I guess, in the movie what happened and what my life was like before basic income and the cancellation. And when it was canceled, I was furious. I have never been that angry in my entire life. But the decision to do the portrait series was completely born out of fury. What I didn't really consider the impact of what these stories are and what people were using basic income for. I firmly believe in building a better world, and this is what informs my life and informs the things that I decide to do and the things that I believe in. I believe that we all need to be a part of this. We all have a role to play. We all have abilities and knowledge and skills. And like even just today, in a room with doctors and politicians and advocates and everybody, it's just been so inspiring to see that and to see us all working together. And we all have our own roles and our own abilities and our skills to lend to these movements to build that better world. So I believe it is our collective responsibility. It's our privilege as citizens to be part of building that. And let's just keep going and doing that. So without further ado, a human picture.
Thanks for joining Hamilton's discussion on basic income.
The pilot was giving thousands of Ontarians money to ensure they have the basic necessities of life.
Artist Jessie Golem was part of the program. Days of basic income for those in desperate need. What happens now?
Government's move inspired photographer Jessie Golem.
A photographer named Jessie Golem started a project called Humans of Basic Income.
She's trying to put a face to some of the people affected by this cut. She herself is also a basic income recipient.
It was meant to be a 3-year study. Your income had to be below $30,000, and then you would receive a basic income of up to $1,400 a month. I was receiving about $700 a month. What I have personally seen, both in myself and everybody I have met on the pilot, people were using basic income to build their own business or go back to school or get jobs. So they were kind of seeing it as not a handout, but sort of like this opportunity. They made the announcement on July 31st, and all they said is, we are going to compassionately wind down the pilot. The next day, I was sitting with some friends and we were talking, and then I thought, well, we're going to get them to hold cardboard, and we're going to get them to write down what they were using basic income for, and I'll get people to hold these signs and I'll take their pictures. I got on Facebook and I started searching in community groups in Hamilton, being like, I'm looking for anybody on the basic income pilot. I want to take your picture. There were a lot of questions that this pilot was attempting to ask. I want everybody to know what happened here.
Tom Cooper has been working to reduce poverty in Hamilton. He calls the changes by the Ford government devastating.
Here in Hamilton, we've been supporting more than 1,000 pilot participants who are enrolled in the Ontario Basic Income Pilot.
I wasn't always the biggest fan of basic income, but as I began to learn more about basic income and really read about it, I really felt it was going to be a critical social policy discussion. We saw this pilot as really important in terms of changing conversations about poverty reduction.
This basic income idea, this movement, while the pilot may have been canceled and ended, this really is going to keep going. The cancellation was devastating for a lot of people, but it also strengthened our resolve.
We should be thinking about ways to reduce poverty. We should be thinking about ways to invest in people's future. And the basic income pilot was about that. This is an idea that needs to be explored. The knowledge that we've gained in Ontario needs to be used going forward.
Ontario was leading the world with this pilot. The whole world was watching. And when you cancel it, I'm like, I got to do something. I thought, well, what can I do? Well, I mean, I do know a lot of business leaders. I did spend a lifetime networking and going to learning events. So I thought, well, wouldn't it be cool if the world knew that business people actually do support basic income? If you look at what's going on in the economy, look at the technologies that are coming, I see a lot of job disruption coming. It was really concerning to me. I don't think that the economic suffering of half the population, also the coming of automation, taking out jobs, is a left or right issue. That's everyone's issue.
Human rights should never be left up to debate. That's why we have a Canadian Charter. That's why the United Nations have put in place, conventions on the right to housing, issues around right to children, ending poverty, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. They have purposes. We know that poverty kills. We know that poverty costs lives. This has been well researched. It's not surprising that call to justice 4.5 of the National Inquiry into Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women and Girls is specifically that. If we want to deal with violence, then one of the calls to justice has to be to finally implement a guaranteed livable basic income for all.
In this location where I live, this used to be a booming area in the northeastern of Hamilton, and now it's a lot of low-income people and terrible living conditions around here. All the stores are boarded up. I fell off a roof on my part-time job November 26, 2006. It took me 2 years on workers' compensation. And then they cut me off, and then I went on social assistance. I had to sell my car, my life insurance, give up my apartment, everything. And then ever since then, I've been living in rooms and terrible living conditions, and that affected my mental health. Matter of fact, if you live in poverty long enough, your mental health will affect you, because 1 in 4 Canadians have effective mental illness. It meant a lot to me that I was able to tell the world that I just went through mental illness and prostate cancer, and that's why being on basic income really helped me out greatly. And like right now, I barely have enough groceries till a week from now when I get my disability check. When I was on basic income, I bought like vitamin B12, vitamin D, took one-a-day vitamins, and I felt better. Now I'm back off basic income. I can't afford that kind of stuff. Matter of fact, I can't afford fresh fruits and vegetables, which I need. As you can tell by my teeth, I really need that fresh fruits and vegetables. I spent more money, and each time I spent a dollar, that meant somebody had to work for it, and it created jobs.
Would a basic income reduce poverty more effectively?
Yes, and that is because all the existing programs that we've had, ODSP,
disability support,
yeah, and Ontario Works and all the rest, have really not had a significant impact in reducing the amount of people who live in poverty. So my name is Hugh Siegel. I'm now a senior fellow at the School of Policy Studies at Queen's University. And for about 40 years now, I've been a very strong advocate for a guaranteed basic income as the most rational way and the most efficient way of dealing with poverty in a way that reduces the pathologies of poverty in the lives of the poor and the costs to the rest of us. I grew up in a home that was, I would say, on the cheery edge of poverty. Both my parents died young, which, by the way, is a perfect indicator of what poverty does with respect to health status. Most provinces now in Canada spend about 50% or more of their budget on healthcare. We will not have enough money to sustain that healthcare system unless we begin to do some upstream investing to reduce the stream of people who need the system because they have chronic and other diseases which are often occasioned by poverty. Because low-income people get sick sooner, go to hospital quicker, stay in hospital longer, live shorter lives. So not addressing that question, I think, is at some level immoral. It's certainly incompetent in terms of a mixed market economy. And the failure to do so is only going to produce way greater costs.
When I come to this country, I didn't know what welfare is. I didn't know what social assistance is, because when I come here, I went straight into a work as a nanny, and I worked there for 5 years, and from there I went back to school and did the personal support care worker. So I've been working in the field for, when I took sick, it was about, I already did like 17 years of it when I took sick. So it was like a gut wrench when I took sick, and I have to like go and ask for help. My name is Rhonda Costello. I'm from a small island of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and I came to live in Hamilton 24.5 years ago. I'm a mother of 2 girls and 1 grandson. At the time, I was going through some rough time, and I need to get that little bit of boost because at the time I was living off of $729. The basic income was the perfect fit. It's not a quick fix. It's not the magic fix, but it was decent enough to sustain life with who is living under such condition. Just don't judge the book by the cover. Sit down and have a talk about people's life. Sit down and know the person's journey.
My name is Tom McDowell, and I am an instructor in the Department of Politics and Public Administration at Ryerson University. I was living in Hamilton in July 2018, around the time of the cancellation. And the simple fact was that unless somebody was to collect the evidence, most of the information or all of the information from the pilot would have been lost. My initial interest in basic income was inspired by the need to better understand policy solutions to some of the problems presently facing the contemporary labor market. For example, unstable jobs, the nature of precarious work, contract work, and rising inequality and poverty. So for instance, in our case, what we were able to do was to conduct a quantitative survey that provided a foundation for a series of qualitative questions that would be asked during the interview process. So we were able to identify what some of the experiences of former participants were.
Things were getting extremely tight, mainly because my guide dog became ill. The medication alone cost me approximately $225 a month, which is basically a quarter of my income, I suppose. I have had this dog since December of 2009. You know, she's so much a part of my life. I don't know what I'm going to do when she's not here. The extra money that I got through the basic income pilot project, being very pessimistic about the whole thing, I put money aside for her. I was able to use money from the pilot to afford to buy triple mix for my garden so that I can grow more of my own food and be more self-sufficient, self-reliant.
I just got this new job that I'm excited about. Piano teaching is going well.
One of my really good friends, she bought a house, and she sort of bought it with this plan of like having a basement apartment that I could live in with her in this house.
I moved all my stuff yesterday, so yeah, everything is just boxes everywhere, and I'm fairly certain that if I didn't have friends in this city, I wouldn't be able to live here. Yeah, because like it's just so expensive that you almost like you need to know somebody who's either able to offer you affordable housing or somebody that you trust that you could be roommates with or something like that.
We are living in a very unpredictable world. Like, you know, COVID has sort of shown us that. I think we're going to have to build that better world, and I think giving everybody a guaranteed livable income should be a very key ingredient in that recipe for the better world.
Well, with all the hardships I've been through, I know that things can be better and things can be worse. That's what my dad said. That comes from the dirty 30s. Things could be better and things could be worse. And with basic income, we know it can be better.
Okay, well, thank you. Yeah, you know, in some ways, I guess the film kind of speaks for itself. So I don't know how to follow that, even though I'm in the film. I guess, does anybody have any questions or any thoughts or anything? We can just sort of open it up and have a discussion. How does that sound? Don't go chomping at the bit now. Actually,
There. Thank you. This is a question out of ignorance, really. I don't really know the background of why the Ontario government shut the program or canceled the program. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the basic income pilot was started by the Ontario Liberal government under Kathleen Wynne, who was premier at the time. And it was meant to be a 3-year pilot, and it was started in 2017. In 2018, there was an election, and the Liberal government lost and was replaced by the Conservative government with the premier, Doug Ford. And he'd gone on the record multiple times during his campaign, and I was really concerned. So I watched this, and he had gone on the record stating that he had no intention of canceling the pilot and looked forward to seeing the results. One of the very first things he did when he got elected was cancel the pilot. It was like maybe a week or two after he had been elected when the pilot was canceled. The announcement that the social services minister at the time, Lisa McLeod, said was that clearly the pilot wasn't working, which they had no research to prove of that. They had, like, we were doing the research, like they had no evidence to support that or to base anything off of that. They just said, oh, it clearly wasn't working, so we're going to do a compassionate wind down, but without giving any sort of date, any sort of information, or any sort of like all of us on the pilot were just like, what does that mean? Like, are we going to lose basic income next month? In 2 months from now, what's happening? But that was like really like it was purely a political decision. It was purely a partisan decision, and it was done because the Conservative Party doesn't like a Liberal Party, as stupid as that is. And yes, we are suing the government for that.
I have a question. I just had a comment. Like, thank you for sharing it. Thank you for being vulnerable. I am new to this, so I'm not on the advocacy side. And it's just, I would say today has been very enlightening, but also disheartening, knowing that people have been working on this for so long. But I just wanted to commend you on it. It was beautiful. It was really beautiful.
Thank you. And I honestly really wasn't much of an advocate before getting into this work either. So and now I am now. So I think anybody can do it, and we all should, because we pay those people like our taxpayer money, and we elect those people, and their job is to serve us. So we have to make them serve us. You can email, like if you go, it's called ahumanpicture.com, or you can Google it. There's like, you can contact people there. You would be getting in touch with Tom Cooper, who was in the movie from the Hamilton Roundtable for Poverty Reduction.
And also Olivia was talking earlier about a toolkit that was developed, and you can access the toolkit by Googling Basic Income Nova Scotia, and it's right on the website.
So, as someone through my blog, worthmatters.blogspot.com is where you'll find it online, who does similar to work as you do, because I am a poverty advocate right here in Halifax myself, and seeing your video about how basic income was bettering the lives of everyone who received it in Ontario, everyone that you interviewed, it really touched me. And it made me think about the whole time while I was watching the video. You see, back when the Liberal government was in power from 2013 to 2021, we had what was called during that time an ESIA transformation, which some improvements to our local system did happen, but did not happen to the capacity that the community was expecting them. It made me think about how if transformation here in Nova Scotia was much better, and the end result ended up being what it actually was, how much like it would have improved our lives. My question to you is, what would you say the difference is in dollar amount between what you were receiving while the basic income pilot project did exist and what someone, and I don't know if you yourself is receiving support from the Ontario Works program, which is similar to the Employment Support and Income Assistance program we have here in Nova Scotia, or if you're receiving any support from DSP, but like which Ontario Disability Support Program, but would you know anything about the difference in dollar amount, like how much less people that rely on that system in Ontario had to live on?
I'm not currently on OW or ODSP. I can speak to them though. I work, so I work in a nonprofit that serves a lot of clientele that are on OW or ODSP. On the Ontario Basic Income Pilot, if you were a single person, you can make up to $1,300 a month in basic income. The clawback rate for it, the threshold and the only factor was that you had to be living below the poverty line and over the age of 18. And they put the poverty line at $30,000 per year. And then if you were making any money and you were working like that, like above that, then that amount would be clawed back by 50 cents a dollar. So it was a shorter or smaller clawback than ODSP and OW. So I did work the whole time. I've always had a job. While I was on the basic income pilot, I was working. So the amount of money that I was getting was about $700 a month. So it wasn't a lot of money. But at that time, it covered my rent. So my rent was covered for that. It didn't pay for like my car insurance or my phone bill or any of the other things. So I still worked, but it still was a huge motivator and allowed me to work less. So before I was on the pilot, I had 4 jobs. And then when I went on the pilot, I dropped down. So I was still working, but then I was able to have the time and energy and the income floor to be able to focus on a business I was trying to build at the time. On ODSP, the amounts do vary. I think it depends on like your family situation and the nature of the disability. But I believe the amount is around $1,100 a month. And on OW, Ontario Works, that amount is much lower. It's $600 to $700 a month. And it's very frustrating because like a lot of the work I do right now with my job is with housing advocacy and helping people find housing. And you cannot find housing with that amount of money. And with both of those programs, if you make any money at all whatsoever, then that amount is fully clawback. So those are the main differences: a smaller clawback and a more compassionate clawback on the basic income pilot, and also just straight up more money and the ability to still work at the time.
I would just say as my final comment before I hand the mic to the next person, if anyone else wants to speak, it sounds like your system in Ontario maybe somewhat, but definitely not much better than what we have here in Nova Scotia. But here in Nova Scotia, for people that are on the system as able to work, they're only allowed to keep the first 250 before income assistance starts clawing back. If you get approved for supported employment, and that includes persons with disabilities that are on the system, then they're allowed to keep the first 350 before income assistance starts clawing back. So it's a little better for those who have disabilities. But anyway, I just wanted to make that final comment before handing the mic to the next person that wants to speak, which I think is you, Anaquan. I could tell by the way you were.
Thank you, Kendall. Thank you. That was a beautiful film, and I sure hope Doug Ford saw it and some other people who were in a position to have done something different. I guess I'm wondering, you mentioned that you started your business, and I'm wondering, like, I sometimes get caught up in what could happen if guaranteed basic income became sort of widespread. And I imagine a lot of people would start small businesses or, feel some support to do that. I'm wondering if that happened a lot in your community, and what other sorts of things that we might not have seen on the film happened for people because of basic income.
Thank you. Yeah, and I was able to get the business started, and then the basic income pilot got canceled, and I put the business on the shelf, and it's only in the last a couple of months really that I've only been able to get it off the shelf and start to get it going again. But when I was meeting all of these people who are in the portraits, like you can see a few of the portraits here. And then over on the table back there, if you want to take a look for yourselves, there's more portraits. There's a lot of them. But like I saw a lot of people, like mothers were spending more time with their kids and using that money to buy healthier food for their children and opportunities for extracurriculars and, you know, signing them up for sports or music lessons and stuff like that. And I say this as a piano teacher, like that stuff's expensive. And you know, I also saw a lot of people like myself who were also starting businesses. I met a bunch of people who were going back to school, and then the impact of the cancellation was really bad because then they were like, I had just paid tuition, and now how am I going to be able to afford school without this? So there was a lot of people like that. And yeah, like just nobody was like not working. Like everybody I had talked to and met were working, and they were using or even using in small ways to improve their lives, like buying better, healthier food, not having to go to food banks, and just like, you know, spending more time with their families and you know, pursuing higher ambitions in forms of business or education and everything. Like putting that business on the shelf was one of the most heartbreaking things I've ever did. And, you know, I've been trying to get it back ever since. But then, you know, finding the time, like the balance between having enough money to justify taking the risk and investing the amount of money it does take to invest in any business whatsoever. It costs a lot of money and it costs a lot of time. And I haven't been able to strike that balance since. It's only just been recently that I'm like, okay, I think I can finally strike the balance. And this is like 6 years later. Yeah. So I hope does that answer your question? Thank you. And your poem this morning was beautiful. Thank you. Yes. Yeah. What an honor. So, any other? Yeah.
I caught a panel on the internet. One of the Liberal cabinet members that worked under Kathleen Wynne, who helped shape it. And he said something that really struck me. He said about 100 different municipalities in the province of Ontario approached them wanting to be a part of the pilot, and they were only able to have the 4. That was really striking to me, that these municipalities realized that the current social system was inadequate and they wanted something better for their residents. And I'm wondering, do you have any like thoughts or comments, especially in light of the panel we just heard, about how can municipalities impact the province, impact the, like, you know, the federal government? Like, you know, do you have any idea of what's happening with these municipalities? That, like, is Hamilton, like, I know there's a class action lawsuit, maybe you can speak a bit to that, but do you know what are the cities doing that got cut off and now have to go back to their, you know, inadequate systems?
So I know that the cities that they did choose, Hamilton, Lindsay, and Thunder Bay, there were a variety of factors that went into those decisions, and they wanted to have different cities, because at the end of the day, it was an experiment. So they wanted to have different cities that had different factors in relation to poverty and what's happening in those places. So that's why they chose those specific communities. There were different demographics that they were considering. With Lindsay specifically, that was actually the largest control group. There was like 2,000 people who, of the 4,000 pilot participants, that were in Lindsay alone, because they wanted to see if they could like take like every single person in a community that was living in poverty and give them a basic income and see what would happen and how that would improve the town. I do know, and we did see that in Lindsay specifically, like the economy of the town improved significantly. I live in Hamilton, and I know in my city, like there's a huge amount of support for basic income, obviously. And we have passed a bill in our city to send the federal government a message of our support for basic income and our want for a basic income program. So not a pilot, a program. So I know other cities, like I know Kitchener, Waterloo, and Guelph have done similar things, and so is Thunder Bay, and I believe Toronto. I could be wrong, but no, I didn't actually know about 100 municipalities. That's really cool. I didn't know that. I'm not surprised, but I'm very curious as to what municipalities those are. So I'm gonna I think I know the cabinet minister you were talking about. So I'm gonna send that person a message and see yeah. And then in terms of like what municipalities can do, like, I mean, like we had those people, or like the panel earlier that was talking about that, and I don't know how to answer that better. Like, it was really cool to see like how communities are coming together to support it. I know with this documentary, I've had the opportunity to visit different communities all over the province in Ontario and hopefully beyond that, showing the documentary and having discussions and, educating people and educating communities about that. And then, about how to take action, which, could be at all levels, from the talking to your member of parliament or your member of provincial parliament or your MLA, or talking to your city councilor or your mayor, and like all those people, like it's all across the levels. It's all cross levels, I guess. I don't know. I hope that answers it. I don't know. So, okay, cool. Any other? Okay. Are there any questions like online? Oh, it's been a super day. It's been a super day. Okay. Well, I don't know. I think, should I wrap this part up, I guess? Sure. So, oh, yeah. Okay. We do. Awesome.
I just wanted to also say thank you for what you did, and just like I think building empathy is a really big part of the change work, and I think the creative work that you've done through film and through photography really helps people see a picture that is very hard for some folks to see. So if you haven't experienced poverty, if you haven't been unhoused, sometimes you don't realize how that shows up in people's lives. And actually the really small amounts of funds that are being provided do a lot. So I think maybe more of this kind of work, maybe some work on personas and research. I know United Way did an experience of poverty simulation where people could kind of understand, through an identity, what it looks like to actually try to survive, and how much hard work it is, how hard services are to access. So I think the more of the general population who can see these things, to build that empathy and that sense of that, village that kind of came at the beginning, which is like really what you kind of went to the village of people who, were in this. And so thank you so much.
Thank you. And yeah, it was interesting when I started doing this work, and never read the comments, never read the comments online. Like, if you don't do that, because like a lot of the language and the rhetoric that was being used was that you're a leech, you're a parasite, you're taking away my taxpayer money, my hard-earned money, and you're being lazy, blah 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 blah. And we obviously know that's untrue. But I thought what struck me was the dehumanizing nature of that language. Like, they're saying you're not a human, you're disgusting, gross bug that is really awful and gross and ugly, and I want to stomp you out. Like that's what they're saying. And that sort of dehumanizing language is people use that in history to justify anger or injustice or against the other. So whether it is a race or poor people or whatever, or gay people or whatever it is, it's that dehumanizing language. So and I've thought about a lot about this, because I truly did not anticipate the impact of the portrait series. I didn't know what I was doing when I started this. I really didn't. I was just very, very, very angry. But seeing that, like, those aren't parasites, these are humans. And that could be your neighbor, that could be your family member, that could be your loved one, that could be your sister, your brother. Like, these are people, and they have lives, and they have stories, and they have families, and they have wishes and hopes and dreams. And we all have a human right to be able to pursue those things, and to be able to live in dignity and live good lives. That is a human right. We deserve that. All of us do, no matter where we came from, or no matter how much money we make. And I really do believe that. So thank you. Okay, if there's nothing else or nobody else, then I just want to thank you all so much for watching and for participating in this discussion. This has been a phenomenally inspiring day, and it's because we're all here, and we're all here committed to building that better world. So don't stop.